Have you ever believed something so completely that you'd bet your life on it? Like this. Vikings wore horned helmets. Everybody knows that. It's in movies, cartoons, video games, history books for kids. It feels undeniable. Except it never happened. Not a single Viking helmet ever discovered had horns attached for battle. The entire image was basically invented by costume designers in the 1800s for opera performances. One theatrical choice turned into historical truth for millions. And that raises a terrifying question. What else do we believe? That was never real, because history is filled with lies so powerful that humanity accepted them as facts. And tonight, you're about to hear one of the biggest. A story so unbelievable that when historians first uncovered the truth, people refused to accept it. For centuries, almost every educated person on Earth believed the same thing, that Napoleon Bonaparte was short, tiny, almost comically small, a furious little dictator compensating for his height. You've seen the image. Napoleon standing beside giant soldiers, angry, insecure, ridiculous. The phrase Napoleon complex literally became psychological vocabulary. There's only one problem. Napoleon wasn't short. In fact, by the standards of his time, he was average height, possibly even slightly above average for a Frenchman in the early 1800s. So how did one of the most famous men in human history become remembered completely wrong? The answer begins with war, not battlefield war, Information war. When Napoleon was conquering Europe, the British feared him more than almost anyone alive. He was brilliant, unpredictable, and terrifyingly successful. So Britain attacked him in a different way, through propaganda. British newspapers and cartoonists started depicting Napoleon as absurdly tiny, a miniature tyrant throwing tantrums across Europe. It made him look weak, laughable, less dangerous, and people loved it. One famous artist, James Gillray, drew Napoleon as a furious child-sized emperor beside towering British figures. The images spread everywhere, and slowly, fiction became memory. But there was another reason the myth survived. Measurement confusion. When Napoleon died, records listed him as 5 feet 2 inches. Sounds short, right? Except those were French inches, and French measurements at the time were longer than British ones. Translated correctly, Napoleon was actually around 5'6" to 5'7", completely normal for his era. But by then, the lie was already immortal. Schools repeated it, movies repeated it, books repeated it, people repeated it, and repetition is dangerous, because the human brain confuses familiarity with truth. Psychologists call this the illusory truth effect. If you hear something enough times, your brain starts treating it as reality, even when evidence says otherwise. That means some of the things society believes most confidently could be completely false, and history proves it. Take another famous fact. People in the Middle Ages believed the Earth was flat. Sounds obvious. Except historians now know that educated people in medieval Europe absolutely understood the Earth was round. Scholars, sailors, astronomers, many of them knew it centuries before Columbus. Ancient Greeks had already calculated Earth's circumference over 2,000 years ago. So where did the flat Earth medieval people story come from? Ironically, from later writers trying to make the past look stupid. In the 1800s, some authors exaggerated history to create a dramatic story. Brilliant modern science versus ignorant medieval religion. It made for great storytelling, but not great truth. And once again, fiction entered culture permanently. But maybe the craziest example of all happened in ancient Rome. There's a story everyone learns. Roman Emperor Nero played the fiddle while Rome burned. It's one of the most famous images in history. An emperor calmly making music while his city died in flames. Except violins didn't even exist yet. And historical evidence suggests Nero may not even have been in Rome when the fire started. Some records claim he returned quickly and organized relief efforts for victims. Was Nero a good person? Not exactly. But the image of him casually performing music during the disaster, probably invented by political enemies after his death. Because winners write history, and enemies rewrite reputations. That's the terrifying power of narrative. Once a story emotionally feels true, facts stop mattering. And this doesn't only happen in ancient history, it happens now, every single day. Think about how many things people confidently repeat online without ever checking. Quotes that famous people never said, photos that were edited, statistics taken completely out of context, fake stories repeated millions of times. A lie doesn't need evidence anymore. It only needs momentum. And the faster the internet moves, the faster fiction hardens into truth. But there's one historical myth that might be the most shocking of all because it changed the entire world. You've probably heard this phrase, "Let them eat cake." Supposedly, when the people of France were starving, Queen Marie Antoinette coldly responded, "Let them eat cake." It became the ultimate symbol of elite cruelty. There's just one problem. She almost certainly never said it. Historians traced versions of the quote back years before. Marie Antoinette even became queen. Some evidence suggests the story was attached to her later by revolutionaries who wanted the public to hate her. And it worked. Because once people emotionally accepted the image of her as heartless, the quote felt true. She became one of history's greatest villains through a sentence. She may never have spoken. Now think about that carefully. One false quote helped fuel hatred during one of the bloodiest revolutions in history. Words shape reality. Stories shape civilizations. And sometimes they shape death. But there's an even darker layer to all this, because the biggest lies are rarely the obvious ones. The most powerful lies are the comfortable ones. The stories society wants to believe. That's why myths survive for centuries, not because they're accurate, but because they're satisfying. The Viking helmet myth is fun. The short Napoleon myth is funny. The flat earth medieval people myth makes us feel smarter than the past. These stories survive because they entertain us emotionally. Truth is often less dramatic, and humans prefer drama. In fact, neuroscientists discovered that emotionally charged information spreads faster and stays in memory longer than neutral facts. Your brain is literally built to prioritize compelling stories over accuracy. That means history isn't just a record of events. It's a battlefield of narratives. Some true, some false, most mixed together so tightly that separating them becomes nearly impossible. And maybe that's why this matters so much today. Because we live in the first moment in human history where billions of people can spread information instantly. One viral post can rewrite public perception overnight. And once enough people repeat something, it becomes reality in the public mind. Even if it never happened, that should scare you. Because somewhere right now, future generations are probably inheriting myths that began this week, maybe even today. And one day, people may believe those myths with absolute certainty, just like the horned Viking helmets. So next time you hear a fact, everyone repeats confidently. Pause for a second. Ask yourself, do people know this because it's true, or because they've heard it 1,000 times? Because history has a warning for all of us. The most dangerous lies are not the ones people doubt. They're the ones everybody knows. And sometimes, if a story is repeated long enough, fiction stops being fiction. It becomes reality itself.